We are back for episode 10 of Kofe Talk, a podcast that connects you with individuals from the sports community over a cup of coffee. Our next guest is a cinematographer and editor for Mission Driven Studios, Daniel Carter. How are we doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm stoked to be on.
I appreciate you, carving out the time to take and do this thing with me. I've been a fan of your work. I'm pretty sure I've tried to hire you at some point down the line, maybe once or twice.
Yeah, crazy to think that was a thing at one point. Like I was thinking about that earlier. I was like, where did our road start? And I was like, that's it. It was like Georgia Tech. This is a while back, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's probably been over a year and a half now that I reached out to you. I think you were with the Chargers at the time, and big fan of your work. And I think you do such a good job visually, storytelling wise. I was very, very impressed. And we just got to Georgia Tech. We lost Ryan Wise, who I had on a previous podcast. He's now at Michigan, and I was looking for a talent to replace him. And I mean, you were, one of my top targets and trying to get that done. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. But I think you landed a job with the Orioles then.
Yeah, so I went to the Orioles shortly after that. Was in the gym one night after editing one day, and just got a phone call while I was like warming up from a guy that just saw me in a Slack channel and was like, "Hey, I see you have Chargers by your name." And he's like, how does this interest you if I said we want to bring that NFL type of vibe to Major League Baseball, like bring that swagger to it? And I was like, that sounds pretty neat.
Yeah.
How do you want to do that? And he told me the plan, and I was like, I'm all in. Let's go for it. So
yeah, cool. I love it. So before we jump into that, do you want to give me a quick 3 to 5 minute rundown on how you got started in the sports industry?
Started honestly back in high school. I had a teacher that she was a broadcast journalism teacher my sophomore year, and I stayed with her every single year from sophomore year to senior year. I was always taking a class with her, and she was just showing us all these great stories that people were telling and the way they were telling it. And it was anything from athletes to like a 7-year-old kid and like his neighbors like riding bikes every single day. And it's just the way they were telling the story just captivated to me because I was just so intrigued in like how they found the stories, how they put it all together. Like no story was ever the same. And it was just really intriguing to me. And ended up going to South Carolina once I graduated high school, and I went there for broadcasting. And then my sophomore year, I had a professor, Miles Romney was his name. And I was just talking to him in his office one day before an exam. And he's like, I think you would, like from your background, like really enjoy just like producing sports videos for the athletic system here. If that interests you, I know the lady that recruits interns for it. And I was like, yeah, that sounds really cool. I didn't really have a creative background though. So I knew going in, I was going to have to get a lot of critiquing and a lot of just letting them just kind of pour into me creatively and showing me the ropes and everything. And so ended up loving it. I was doing it for about 5 months. It was the first semester of my sophomore year of college. And I just eventually, as an unpaid internship and just paying for college and rent, things like that, money just got really thin. So I had to quit, unfortunately, which was tough. I loved it. But thankfully I got to go serve at the church I was going to, doing a lot of production for them. I was still doing video stuff, still doing all this. And then about 6 months into that, they announced that Justin King was coming from AL.com to South Carolina to be the creative director.
So was this around 2016?
2017.
2017? Okay.
2017. And I knew at that point, I was like, I just saw some of the stuff they were putting out. And I was like, I know that I left beforehand, but if I ever get a second chance of this, like, even if I have to eat like eggs and rice every single day and like drink water from my neighbor's tap, like I was going to make it happen. And so I reached out to him, and I reached out to his 2 executive producers, and they left me on red. And I was like, so like sad for a couple of days. Cause I was like, dang it, man. I was like, that was my only shot. I went to a basketball game and like positioned myself like in the student section closer to the camera guy. So if one of them walked by, I could stop
You
them
can
and
like
talk
hit
to
them.
them. Just hit them up and be like, yo, man, like, nice camera. What is that? And just start talking to them. But yeah, it for a while it didn't work. And then I just threw one last just line out into the water, so to speak, and messaged the same girl that hired me like 2 years before as an intern. And I was like, hey, like, there's any way like you can help me get into this, like whether it's running cards or even like taking out their trash, like something. And she was like, hey, well, like I still work there and like we're still like hiring interns and stuff if you'd like be interested in coming back in. And I was like, yes, that's it, like 100%. And so that's when I really got into sports and started to take it like very seriously, very intentionally.
Yeah.
I was so lucky to have Justin King, Austin Kuhn, Joe Busher, Alex Grant, and I'm forgetting a couple other names off the top of my head, but they just poured into me. We were doing challenges every single week where you would pick your favorite show on Netflix and try to recreate the intro to it.
Okay.
Like things like that just got me so interested in it and I loved it. And that's how I got into it.
And were you getting paid at that point?
No, I was doing a lot of things on the side to make ends meet, which I feel like for a lot of people that want to get into sports, that's what you're going to have to do, unfortunately. A lot of internships are unpaid and the hours are going to be pretty rough. But I mean, that's there's a quote that I heard a while back, and it was, if you don't sacrifice for what you want, then what you want is what you're going to sacrifice.
Yep.
And so I really took that to heart. And I knew there was going to be some things I had to do my senior year. I had to do my practicum for broadcasting, and I was working 9 to 5 in a newsroom. And then I would go home, change, and then go work from sports from 6 to midnight, 6 days a week. That was my life for 5 months. And I loved every second of it. It was something that I cared and was passionate about. So it didn't feel like work at all.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, and I think that is so true. And you really have to sacrifice to do what you love.
Yeah.
I was in a similar situation coming out of school. I took a internship with the Brooklyn Cyclones, had
Yeah.
job offers on the table, and
Yeah.
decided to take this internship that I was making like
Mm-hmm.
$10 an hour in New York City, and that's obviously nothing.
Yeah.
After the internship, I I did a full-time job for like 6 or 8 months in West Virginia with Marshall, got hired full-time back with the Brooklyn Cyclones, was making $25,000. And in New York City, I think my rent was like 2,000 a month. I mean, it was
Yeah.
ridiculous. And to
Yeah.
make ends meet, what I did was I would go to work early, showed up about an hour before anyone else in the building, because I needed to leave a half hour before everyone so I can make the
Yeah.
train back into Brooklyn from Coney Island. I was a janitor in the nights, New York
Mm.
Sports Club, and I did that for, I think it was like 4 or 5 months before the season, finally started, just to again make ends meet so I could continue to do what I loved. I didn't want to take a full-time job and wake up every day and hate myself. So
Right. That's good stuff. I feel like a lot of people, like especially in the early stages,
yeah,
um, I feel like they could just get a lot farther if they recognize right off the jump. Like I know people that like they ask me like, what camera you use, and it's like, man, the camera. I mean, it has a little bit to do with it, but there's so much more behind that. Like there's so much work that you have to put in the back to understand like the exposure triangle, lighting situations, coloring, like all that stuff. Like when you're paying, like when people pay you, like they're not just paying you just to go press that button. They're paying you for the experience that you had to go through
yeah,
and all the training you had to go through in order to be able to push that button, in order to cut that light on. Like you have to know the principle behind all those things. So I think for people that are trying to get into it, man, like one, just humble yourself.
yeah.
And know that even I know people that have been in the business for 25 years and they're still learning like new coloring tricks in DaVinci Resolve like every single day, and they're still perfecting their craft. And so yeah, man, that's been huge.
Yeah, and in our field, it's so rapid speed that
Yeah.
you're constantly having to learn. I mean, programs change, trends change, some of the main principles stay, similar and the same, but a lot of we have to be very adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
in how we navigate through our careers because of how quickly things are changing within the space. I mean, like TikTok, you see it like
Yeah.
last year came to the forefront. A lot of digital creators are like, now what is this? Like
Yeah.
how do we create for another platform and
Yeah.
make sure we're doing it effectively? So tell me a little bit more. So you ended up going to the Chargers after that, and then
My senior year, I feel like every senior in college gets to that point where they're just overly stressed trying to figure out what they're going to do after college.
yeah,
And I mean, people just make all these outlandish jokes on what they're going to do. I know people to this day, they're like, yeah, I'm just going to go live in a van and drive across the country and just like do marketing and stuff. And those people, like I know a couple of them now, and they're doing really well and they're doing shoots for like Rip Curl and all this. I'm like, good for them. But for me, it was like, man, um, I don't know if I want to keep doing video stuff, to be honest. Like I just thought it was a really fun thing. Didn't really know if I could make it a job and do it 50 plus hours a week. And so my dad's a pastor, and I was very involved in church throughout college. And
yeah,
I was like, well, maybe I've always grown up with a heart for athletes. So what if I just go into athlete ministry, like team chaplain, or maybe like FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes? And maybe if I go into something like that, I can still be around sports, still love it, and just get to invest in those athletes. And so I was actually in March of 2019, I was getting on a plane to go to Denver to check out a church,
yeah,
and see if I could help them in any way, shape, or form. And as I was getting on the plane, Austin Kuhn, who was a guy that I was really close with in South Carolina, he was one of the producers for Justin, reached out to me and was like, hey, I posted my reel like 2 to 3 days before I went on this trip. And
okay,
I was in my mind, I was like, man, this is the last thing I'm probably ever going to make as a producer. It's my favorite stuff. It's been a fun run.
yeah,
I just wanted to put it on Twitter and just like for something for me to look back on one day.
yeah,
I
for
didn't
sure,
intend on it doing anything. Even like to this day, I try to treat Instagram and Twitter all that like my journal. I don't use it as like a LinkedIn. I don't use it to network, because I feel like networking is you're making relationships for your gain, but I just felt that it was much more valuable to build relationships with people because then you're serving them for their gain.
yeah,
And through that, the relationships, I mean, they're just so much stronger because they're genuine.
yeah,
And so it was just that one last thing I wanted to share with all my friends and family before I stopped doing video stuff. And I was going to go into ministry. So I put this video out, was going to get on this plane, and Austin Kuhn texted me and was like, hey man, he's like, um, did you like, did you see your Twitter video this morning? And I was like, oh God, did it get reported? Like I used commercial music,
yeah,
so I'm probably gonna get flagged by Twitter or something. So I'm like freaking out. And he's like 15,000 views in one night, which like for me on Twitter with like 400 followers was like a really big deal. I was like, wait, what? I was like,
yeah. I
that
mean, that is a
really,
big deal.
yeah. And so I was freaking out because I was like, that's not real. Like, I don't believe that. And I went and looked it up, and sure enough, like a bunch of people were commenting on it and stuff. And that was the first time that's really happened to me. I didn't know what to do. So I was like freaking out. And I was like, nah, this is like, it's great. But like, once again, like, I just want to go into ministry.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
about to get
Austin
on a
Kuhn,
plane.
yeah. And Austin Kuhn texted me. He's like, yeah, I just got a text from a guy named Jason Levine. Is a head of production for the Chargers. He asked if you're doing anything after college. And in that moment, I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I've always been, before I get to this next thing, I've always been an advocate for your availability is going to take you much farther than your ability in
yeah,
life. And so, like, throughout college, my goal was to always be available whenever these guys needed help, because I knew that it was basically their job to mold me and to help me grow as a creator. But as long
for
as I was
sure.
available, it was going to keep paying off in the long run, over and over and over and over. They're going to build trust. Eventually, their talent will start to wear off on me. And it was, yeah, it was in that moment he texted me. He's like, yeah, he's like, I think you would represent them well because you represented us well. And I was like, all right. I was like, if you think so, like, I don't think I'm qualified for the job against the NFL, man. But sure. And I got his number and called him on the plane, and he told me that there was an opening that they were trying to fill, and it was between me and two other guys. And I basically told him, man, I was like, man, I'd be honored if y'all take me, but I also would be completely content if y'all didn't, either way. But I mean, it would be a great honor, and I would love to come serve you guys however I could. And I don't think he was expecting that. I think he was expecting me to really be like fighting and be like, oh, I'm better than those two. And I was like, nah, man, like good if I do, good if I don't. Like I know there's a higher calling and mission on my life, and whether that's producing videos or whether it's
Yeah.
going and mentoring these athletes, either way, it's a win to me. And I mean, thankfully, he thought that I'd be suitable for the job, and graduated. And as I got my degree, I didn't even go back to my seat. I walked straight out the back um, of the arena and got in my car and drove to Los Angeles. 2,500 miles, I
That's
think, over
awesome.
3 days. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, it was a crazy start to a wild ride so far.
Yeah, and then you're at the Chargers. You get your foot in the door with the Orioles
Mm-hmm.
after that.
So I was with the Chargers for the 2019 season. It was the season right before they moved into SoFi Stadium. A lot of exciting things were happening around them at that time. I mean, I was at a SEC school as an intern, and then I get put within a month. I get put into a position where this NFL team is about to move into like the mecca of college arenas,
For
and
sure.
or not college arenas, sorry, professional arenas. And like, I mean, it was kind of trial by fire. Like as soon as I got there, the first day I got there, I had to do a practice edit highlight because David Bretto, who was my advisor and the social media editor, um, he was doing something else, and they gave me a camera that I didn't even know how to work. And they were like, just go make something cool. And it might have been one of the worst things of my life. Like I was like, I'm about to get fired. I've been here for a day. I'm about to be stranded in Los Angeles. Like, what am I gonna do? But that was a really cool moment because both Jason Levine and David Bretto sat down with me, and they're like, "Man, we just threw you into the fire right there." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "It's all good. I mean, it's I figured that's how it goes." And they're like, "Nah, like that was just we just wanted to see how you'd respond, like because that's I mean that's what the sports industry is, right? Like you get told
It
last
definitely
minute how
is.
things go, like, hey, go grab that camera, someone's gonna be here for a signing or something like that. Like you got to be ready to go on an instant. Man, I'm so thankful for my time with the Chargers because it was just things like that that prepared me that I didn't even know was preparing me in that moment for something much bigger. Where it was just those nights where they'd be like, hey, like go up to Hollywood and you're shooting like this workout, or you're actually going to be shooting from the sidelines for this game. And usually interns don't do that. Like usually interns are like running cards, editing things, stuff like that. And then
Yeah.
just progressively they started making me just or not making, but they were letting me shoot these things and edit these things. And it got to a point where I like edited the defensive intro video for the stadium.
Yeah.
I was editing this recurring content series we had called ASAP, which stands for Any Squad, Any Place. It came out every Saturday before we played a team, sponsored by Audi, which was crazy that they were like entrusting me with all these things. And yeah, man, I was just blessed with the opportunity. But there was a certain point where I just had kind of an epiphany where I was like, man, I love what I'm doing out here. And I feel like I'm really at the top of, I mean, not even the top of my game, but there's just like these endless possibilities for me, like out here in Los Angeles in the NFL, like
Yeah.
with all these resources, all this equipment, about to move into the biggest arena in the NFL, like so much. But I remember missing Thanksgiving, missing Christmas, and missing New Year's with my family. And I remember being on a FaceTime call, and my 3-year-old niece was like, "Uncle Daniel, I wish you could be home to like open like presents with us."
The floodgates open.
And for me, dude, that was a wreck. Like instantly, like my heart just like dropped to my stomach, and I like leaned over like this, and I was like, "Yeah, me too, me too, me too." Now, like in that moment, man, I knew that even though sports is a very big thing, it's not the greatest thing. And so I was looking for ways to. Around that moment, I was kind of looking for a way to get back to the East Coast,
Yeah.
um, and I didn't even reach out to people. And I think that's what's really interesting that I even to this day um, I can't even comprehend is every single job that I got, except for the South Carolina one, like I never reached out to them.
Yeah.
Like these people always reached out to me. And I think a lot of that just had to do um, just with seeking. It wasn't self-seeking. Like I wasn't trying to do this for my gain. I was trying to do this for a much bigger gain than myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of these opportunities came from is because I guess people saw that. And that's one thing that you got to have when you work for these sports programs. And so in the gym one night, Tyler Hopberger from the Orioles calls me and he's like, "Hey, man, we want you to bring that NFL swagger to the MLB." And I was like, all right, say less. Tell me when. Tell me how. Let's do it.
I love that. And I think you did a really good job with the Orioles in doing so. I love that some of these professional leagues are starting to put more resources into their digital and, creative, because I've always been in college
Yeah.
athletics. And for me, I've always looked at professional sports and been like, this is such a miss
Yeah.
in what their strategies are and how they're pushing their content. And I'm glad
Hmm.
that some teams were doing it, but for the majority, I think it
Yeah.
was still the basic practices and marketing
Hmm.
collateral that has been going out. I think
Yeah.
now, and in the MLB, we're seeing it more. I know opening day just happened, and there's been a lot of cool content that's been in the space. So it's been really fun to see. I want to talk about this. You get this job with Mission Driven Studios,
Yeah.
and I have you quoted saying, I made work and success the center of my life and
Yeah.
sacrificed many things that were actually dear to me. The
Hmm.
difference between the values I've been claiming and the life I've been actually living equaled
Yeah.
the pain I have been feeling. And the
Yeah.
pain was too much for me to carry. I think you go
Yeah.
on and you talk a little bit more and, leaving success and kind of, living your life with a bigger purpose and through Christ.
Yeah.
Can you speak to how you were feeling in those moments? And then
Yeah.
when did you kind of come to that realization and I need to make a change?
Yeah. I love that, man. I love that. I love that that's still something that still kind of resonates with people today, is what I said. I think I started to wrestle with it a couple months into the Orioles, I think.
Yeah.
I was just seeing a bunch of pictures that a lot of people were posting. And it just kind of seemed like a bunch of people were kind of just running a rat race. Like all they were doing was, man, like I want the highlight of my life to be able to market these millionaires and market these multi-billion-dollar teams.
Yeah.
And like I want that status. And I think for me, like I said in that Instagram post, I think ironically enough, I was listening to a sermon by Tim Tebow at Passion in 2020, and he talks about the difference between success and significance. And I think that was a moment for me that it really switched, because anyone can live a successful life,
Yeah.
because that's when you're successful for yourself. You can get that promotion in that job. You can get that raise. But I think there's a whole different level to being significant in your life. And I think the difference is with significance is you're impacting others and not just yourself.
Yeah.
And I think in that moment, I was reflecting and I was like, man, I was like, what am I doing right now in my life besides just marketing these millionaires that go out there and they're great people and I love them. I loved my time with both the Chargers and the Orioles. And I loved everyone that I worked for. But man, I was like, what about the person right now that's like being sold into human trafficking and no one's there to tell her story? What about the kid in Africa or in India or in the Philippines that no one's telling their story of the disorder they have, that the whole town has called them cursed because they were born with their feet on backwards.
Yeah.
And like no one's there to tell their story. And so that was just really a moment for me. Um, I was just really deeply convicted and I was like, man, there's got to be. And I do believe, and I have seen this a lot recently, and I love it, that sports teams are really starting to work on community pieces and impacting and giving back to the same community that pours into them.
Yeah.
And I love that because that's the content that I care about. But man, there was just this huge conviction on my life that the gifts that I've been given, I mean, they're gifts, right? That we've been given. So they're not really ours. And the thing about gifts is you want to give them back to people.
Yeah.
And so I was just trying to figure out a way like, man, how can I do that? And I want to go back to what I was talking about earlier with relationships. And when I was in Los Angeles, um, through a friend of a friend that I met there who lives in Jacksonville now,
Yeah.
was like, hey, we have a job opening in Jacksonville for the Tim Tebow Foundation or Mission Driven Studios. But yeah, would you be interested in coming in, like producing stuff for us? So I was doing some research on just the stuff that Tim stands for. And he's doing a huge push right now for anti-human trafficking all around the globe. And then he has Night to Shine, which is this global event every single year that celebrates those with special needs and gives them a prom.
Yeah.
And it was just the things that and I was still getting able to produce sports content as well because he's friends with all these athletes and coaches and all this. So it's like, man, it's the best of both worlds. What am I doing?
For sure.
And so I like as soon as as soon as the season got done, I went and talked to my boss, and it was really hard because I loved my time with the Orioles. I was like, man, I was like, this is something that I didn't know I was yearning for like my whole life. And now the opportunity is right in front of me. And I'm not going to pass this up because there's so many people out there that need their stories heard. And who's going to tell that story? It's us. Like we've been entrusted with that gift. And I like calling producers and videographers, I like calling us bridge builders. I don't like calling us producers, cinematographers. Like I told my boss jokingly, I was like, yeah, can I get bridge builder like put over my door? And the reason why I say that is because like that's what we do when we go tell these stories and we put them on Instagram, put them on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, websites. You are building these bridges to help people like domestically and in the US be able to like financially provide and help get these kids out of the bondage that they're in and these
Yeah.
families out of the bondage that they're in. And so, yeah, man, it's been the greatest calling I could ever conceive or I've ever had is to first be an ambassador of Christ, but also the gifts that he's given me, be able to save people from bondage. It's been the two highest things in my life that I value to this day.
I've obviously, have seen what Tim Tebow stands for. I think he's an
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable human. I was at the Brooklyn Cyclones. I went down to St. Lucie. He just started his baseball
Yeah.
career, and I
Yep.
got to meet him very briefly. He's an extremely polarizing, great human.
He is.
And when I saw that you made this jump and we were talking back and forth about it, I did some more research, and these stories that you're able to tell,
Yeah.
I mean, that is extremely cool. And I think you're exactly right. And there's a
Yeah.
quote that I've seen is like, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to like document it or put it out, like, did the tree actually ever even fall?
Yeah.
And that's essentially, I think, like what you're saying. And if
Yeah.
you're not bridging and telling these stories,
Right.
nobody knows that those things are actually happening around the world. So I
Yeah.
think that work that you're able to do and the stories you're able to share is extremely cool. I have a question about this new position, and you don't
Okay.
have to answer it if you're uncomfortable with it. But
For sure.
you take this job, you step out of from the Orioles and the success that you've had.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting are you compensated less for the work that you're doing now and being able to follow your passions, or do you like, was it kind of best of both worlds where you're still, from a monetary value, you're still making the same? What's that been like? Because a lot of times people talk about, you know, the money in sports, and I'm a
Right.
big and huge believer in, if you wake up and you are miserable, I don't care if you
Yeah.
have $1 million, $100 million, money's not going to make you feel better about your
Yeah.
life. There's an
It won't.
endless amount of money and you're always going to want more. But
Right.
like when you wake up and you're doing something you're passionate about, that's where I feel is
Yeah.
the true key to having happiness and fulfillment in your life.
Yeah, man, that's a great question. And that's some good input you really put into it as well. I think for me, um, I feel like in the sports world, just a lot of people that I've talked to, it's compensate me for this and then I'll do this. And I think what is really unique about just our company, our foundation,
Mm-hmm.
is we're mission driven, and for us, the end goal isn't how much we make; it's how many lives we're able to impact,
Yeah.
and whatever it takes to get there, we're gonna do it, and we're gonna be all in. And man, we've just seen God provide in so many ways. That it's the thing is it's always been abundantly more than we could have ever asked for, which blows our mind because we'll go in and we'll just go drop this like just this one campaign just about anti-human trafficking, and it doubles the expectation of donations.
Yeah.
And it's just like, holy cow, like we just went into it just hoping that it would impact one life or
Yeah.
maybe two lives. And then next thing you know, we go back and check, and it's like we're just in awe that it's just always been expecting, or it's just been abundantly more than we've ever expected. And I think that just goes back to, we have the foundation of, we believe that there is a mission and a calling on our lives, and we're going to do whatever we can to finish the mission, and not to just finish it, but complete it in whole, and to do
Yeah.
it wholeheartedly. And that's been the thing for us. And if we just keep that in the forefront of our mind as we're going about it, like anything is going to be a win to us. If we put out a video, it only has, I think Tim has over 3 million followers.
Yeah.
And I think if that video only gets 10,000 views, but one person's impacted by it and they go and start serving at like their local high school or middle school and just do a mentorship program, well, then that one video is a win. And guess what? We're going to try to make 100 more like it to do the same thing. And so I think when we look at it from that perspective, we go into work every single day with the mindset of how can we serve and how can we impact those. The motto of the foundation is to bring faith, hope, and love to those that need a brighter day in their darkest hour of need. And when we look at it through that lens, like everything is a victory. And so with that, like when you think about it that way, you just come at it with gratitude.
Yeah, and then again, it brings more fulfillment to you than just making XYZ video that maybe, gets hyped up on social and all those
Yeah.
different things, but might not touch somebody in the meaningful way that you're looking for it to. And I find that extremely cool, and I love that you were self-aware enough to be able to go and discover that in yourself and make
Yeah.
that jump, because I think even outside the sports world, people want to go and try things and risk things and
Mm-hmm.
follow their true passions, but they're afraid to. And
Yeah.
you don't need to be afraid to. Sometimes you
Yeah.
got to jump into it and know that God is with you, and He's going
Yeah.
to take you through things that you can handle.
Yeah. It's I mean, we say it all the time, but you can't have a testimony without a test, right?
Facts, yeah, yeah,
And I mean, that's just the way it is. Because when you go through those trials and tribulations, and you, in that moment that you think there's no way you can get out of it, and you do, and it's like, wow, there was something much bigger and much higher than myself that got me through that, because I couldn't get through it myself. And man, I had a moment like that recently. We recently had a gala event where we just invite a lot of close friends and family just to come out, and we do like this golf tournament at
yep,
TPC Sawgrass. And um, we showed one of our videos that we've done. And that's one thing too, a lot of people have reached out to me about. They're like, man, are you still doing film stuff, because you're not posting stuff all the time? And it's like, yeah, it's just, I mean, we are posting it, it's just on Tim's personal stuff, so there's no need for it to go on mine.
yeah,
And I it was one of those moments, man. We were at the gala and we played this video of just one of our human trafficking videos, where we actually got to talk to one of the survivors firsthand,
yeah,
and to just see the faces of the people in that room, just to watch their hearts break. And then just watching all these grown people, and there's professional athletes there too, that, I mean, you're watching these like 6'5", 250-pound guys that, like, they could, if they throw a punch at you, you're going to a different zip code. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
watching them just like bawling their eyes out. And I just watched a lot of them at the end of it just stand up and be like, man, I can't just like sit here and let this happen to people. I knew at one point in my career that the best thing that pro sports could offer me was not going to be even close to the greatest thing that God could offer me,
yeah,
which was eternal salvation through Jesus. But to see that and to watch these other people get to experience that for the first times in their life through videos like that, where they see a girl that was in human trafficking get pulled out of it, and then she now knows that she's valued, that she's beautiful, that she has worth, that she's loved, that she's cared for.
yeah,
To see all these people's hearts break for that in a room and be like, I want to go fight for that too. Like, that isn't like, that just blows out of the water the first time I saw one of my videos play in an NFL stadium. Not even close, because I mean, NFL stadiums, people see that video and they're like, yeah, it's sweet. And the team runs out and they forget about it. The second one of your players does something bad, they forget about it. But with that video that we played at the gala, I guarantee you there are still people to this day that are talking about that video to other people. And to me, I mean, that just makes it all so worth it.
I think that just brings a whole new meaning to what we do. And um, I mean, I love hearing the story. I knew with bringing you on that I was gonna definitely reach into
Yeah.
a new sector of kind of what this whole
Yeah.
thing has been. And I always wrap up the podcast in asking, who would you like to see on this podcast?
Ooh.
Somewhere here in the future.
Oh man, who would I want to see on this podcast?
And I'll say
Um,
this: you don't have to necessarily stay within the creative realm. I've had
yeah.
on coaches, and
Okay.
it could really be anybody.
Yeah. Oh man, that's tough. Well, I got two things. Um, One, I would love to see someone that, I mean, honestly, I would kill to just see like Justin King or one of those guys on here.
Yeah.
Just because I love hearing people's stories of how, and Justin has a cool story because he was a student in South Carolina and then he left and he was just seizing all the opportunities in front of him. And then as soon as he got the opportunity to come back home, he has another really, like, if you need wholesome content, like that guy could give you some wholesome content.
Yeah.
And he would be great, man. He would crush it. But there's one last thing too, and I can make this quick that I was just thinking about is I know a lot of people in the sports world. I mean, they may not, it doesn't matter if you're Christian, you're Hindu, you're Buddhist, it doesn't matter what it is, but I really want to encourage those people that are creating to say, why am I creating? What am I creating for? And with the gifts that I've been given, how can I give that back to the community? And how can I give that back to people that don't have voices? Because I think if we're the messengers, man, that's a high calling on our lives. Like that means if you're a messenger, you're telling a story much bigger than your own. And so doesn't matter what religion, what denomination, black, white, gay, straight, like it doesn't matter. Everyone has a gift, everyone has an ability, and I just encourage you to just look inside of yourself and find the things you're passionate about, because I guarantee you what you're passionate about is also meant to be shared with other people. So that's just something that's been on my heart.
Yeah, I think Daniel just wrapped up the show with that mic drop. So
I love it.
I
love
mean,
it.
I don't think I could follow that. That was awesome. So
Yeah.
Daniel, again, man, I really appreciate you carving out the time
Yeah.
and this whole conversation, really hit my heart in a
Yeah.
extremely positive manner. So
Yeah.
again, appreciate you
Yeah.
and
Thanks for having me on.
I look forward to continuing to see your work, man.